Hello everyone and welcome back to Jacqs. Thanks for joining me today in part 3 of my Wedding Memory Planner mini-series. Today we will begin working on the dividers, so let's get started. The next thing we're going to do is create dividers for our planner. You're going to need to cut out at least 4 dividers or as many as you want to use. These will measure 10 inches wide by 11 3/4 inches long. Now I made my pages about a ½ inch longer than Michelle did, just so that you all know that, in case you're combining your pages. The next thing you want to do is score at a ½ inch on the left hand side, and this is going to be folded over and glued down. So now our page will measure at the widest part 9½ inches. The page itself measures about 9 inches. And for those who have access to a cutting machine, I do have SVG files for the dividers, as well as some of the other items I'll be sharing with you today. And that information, as well as an updated tutorial project sheet, will be linked in the description box below. So if you've been following along this mini-series, you're still going to need to go out to that link to pick up the new items, and it will be labeled Volume 2. For those that don't have that type of access, you can just create your pages to be 9 inches across. You could use a tab punch and make your own tabs and add those to the ends of your pages, or you could even use some Avery or whatever brand insertable tabs. So there are definitely options for those that don't have access to a cutting machine. So go ahead and cut out as many of these dividers that you need for your wedding planner sections. Okay, I'm back and I have created all of my dividers. I ended up using 8 dividers in total. So this is what it looks like if you just look at the 4. So I have 2 sets of these. And I not only did that, I also created labels to go along with my dividers. So I have budget, guest, ceremony, wedding party, reception, vendors, honeymoon, and then a blank one. So that could be calendars, it could be anything the holder of this wedding planner might want to put there. And I even added these on with removable glue. It's this Scotch re-stickable glue stick. And that way, if they didn't like these, they can remove them and put whatever they want there for them. I'll provide some blank little labels and they can just write on there what they want. So for the tabs that I created for my dividers, my label measures 2 1/8 by 3/8 inches tall. So if you made these manually, just measure your little tab and then you'll be able to size down to get your label to fit there. But I also created tab labels, and those are provided in the link down below under Volume 1. Now, when I created my categories, I thought about how much stuff is really needed for a wedding, and I ended up grouping categories together. So my budget, it's just going to have straight up budget stuff. Maybe some receipts might be in there. For guest, that'll be your invitations. It'll be transportation and housing for your guest, RSVPs. So anything pertaining to them will be here. Ceremony, that will have things like the officiant. It'll have the location, it'll have decoration, things that need to take place for the ceremony. Maybe emergency kits or list will be listed there. The day of event can be listed in here as well. But you get what I'm doing. I'm grouping things together. That's the way I think, but definitely put this together the way that whoever's going to use it will be able to find the information. That's the most important thing. As I was thinking about these dividers, I love that the tabs were labeled, but I was thinking about all the pattern paper that I'll be adding to this. And I needed places for your eyes to rest. Too much pattern paper isn't always a good thing. So what I've done is created some like page labels for the dividers. They're actually 8.5 by 11 sheets, and they mirror the tabs of my categories. So I have one for budget, I have one for guest, ceremony, and so on. I even have a blank one to go with the blank tab. Now, what I've created is a PDF printable for you, and this will be linked down below. This is a French vintage style, and I use the same font here to match that as the labels. And I love that these are neutral colors because then you can match it up with any paper collection that you might be using if you don't have Here Comes the Bride. It has little flourishes, some little floral, really great design that can go with anything. So what we do with these is take them and adhere them to the front of our divider. So here's our divider. And then you would just glue this on. It does give you about 1/4 of an inch border all the way around. It's a little bit wider on the top and the bottom, but that doesn't really bother me. If you wanted to add another piece of cardstock under this, you could as a matting piece. But the way that I have this set up is that there is a white border around the entire page. That's why I didn't print it borderless. So then you have the color, you have the black and the white. So you have a bit of a layering look already going on here. And I don't really think it's necessary to add another layering piece. But let me show you what that looks like. Since filming this section of the series, I received Country Craft Creations craft cardstock, and it was a very light color craft. And it matched the colorway that I'm using for this project really well. So I tried it with my divider labels, and I absolutely loved how it turned out. So what I've decided to do is go ahead and use the craft as a layering piece for all of my dividers. So I have the divider as the base, the craft layer, and then I'm using my divider label. So that's how I'm going to be doing each of my dividers. To do that, you're going to need to cut 8 pieces of craft or whatever color cardstock you might be using, and these will measure 8 3/4 by 11 3/4. So I'm going to wait to add these till after we get everything else done, and then I'll add these on, just because we're going to be working with the other side of the divider and I don't want to mess up my paper. So let's stick with the budget divider page. Let's flip this over, and we're going to work on the back side of that. What I've done is cut out a matte piece that I'm going to add to the base, and this measures 8 3/4 by 11 1/2. So that gives about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 border. And what we're going to do is create 2 pockets. And we're making dimensional pockets so that you can place receipts in there, because this is the budget section. We want to have area to hold receipts. And this is kind of separate than the receipts or invoices you might get from vendors. This might be if you purchase some candelabras for the tables or something like that. You could just put in these little pockets. So to create those pockets, you're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 9 1/4 by 4 1/2. We're going to take those pieces and we're going to score it 1/2 inch on 3 sides. Rotate, and 1/2 inch, rotate, and 1/2 inch. And then just repeat that on your second piece. We're going to do a little mitering over here at the top left. Just going to put our scissors right at the top of that score line and cut at a slight angle. And repeat that on the other side. And then down below, we're going to cut straight across where our score lines intersect. And do that to the second piece as well. Now we can go ahead and burnish all of those. Okay, I brought in a 1-inch punch. I'm just gonna do a little punching here. I think I'm gonna put these together like I did before. That way they're the same. And we have a little notch there now. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put the first one down. Now, I'm not doing a whole lot of inking on this one. I don't know why. This is a solid core, so I don't really need to. And I don't want to make it too vintage looking either. Okay, so I'm going to put this down about 3/4 of an inch from the bottom of my mat. And what I'm going to do to help the papers from not catching on the tab here is to just use some everyday household tape. You could even use packing tape. And I'm just going to put that over the tab. See, you just put it right over, half here and half on the other side, just right over it. Hope you can see that. There you go. Now you can do the same trick to the sides of the pockets as well. I've never really experienced any problem there, so I don't think I'm going to do that. And then we're going to put the top pocket on about 3/4 of an inch down from the top. I did make little tick marks there. And then I'm also trying to keep my top and my bottom pocket, you know, in line with each other. You can check it like this if you want. Yeah, that looks good. And then over here. So I took some time offline to go ahead and decorate and actually put on a flap to our pockets, just to show you what it would look like in the end. And then I'm going to walk through decorating one with you. So down at the bottom, I used some craft cardstock and then layered it with some of the decorative paper from the collection. I used craft cardstock to create a flap closure for our pockets, and I added a magnet for the closure. On top of the flap, I added some faux gold leather here, which I'm really loving, and then added some crochet ribbon here. This is from Country Craft Creations, but I don't think they carried this particular one anymore. So I have all of our pieces. I'm really loving how this turned out. It looks good. You can still get your hand in there with no problem. Now we'll go ahead and start putting the top one together. So I'm going to give you the measurements for the craft cardstock that will go on top of our pocket. You're going to need one piece that measures 8 1/8 by 3 7/8. This will go here. You'll use your hole punch to punch in a hole again to go along with the one on the top. And then your top decorative piece measures 8 by 3 3/4. Now the way that I did this was I had punched the hole in the top one, glued these two together, and then punched out the craft cardstock. For the pocket flap, you're going to need one piece of craft cardstock or whatever color you're using that measures 8 1/4 by 2 1/8. We're going to put this on the short end, and we're going to score at 1 and 1 1/8. Now you can go ahead and fold on the score lines. And then I'm also rounding the corners. So I'm using a 7mm to round it. And then I did decide to do some inking, and I'm using Archival Ink by Ranger Coffee. You'll also need one set of magnets. Now for this flap, we're going to go at the edge of the score line and make an angle cut. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Okay, now I'm going to just start putting it all together. So I added adhesive glue up to the first score line. We're going to have an 1/8 of an inch gusset to allow for any growth of the receipts in the pocket. So you're going to put this in underneath the pocket there. And I put it in to where it was like maybe 1/16 away from the first score line. Make sure they're even on both sides. So I've added my magnet here. I put the other one on and they line up. Now I'm going to add my decorative pieces for the top. And then I'm going to add another decorative piece on the back side of the flap. This measures 8 by 3/4, and that's to cover the magnet. I did round the top 2 corners. And then the next thing we would do is add our ribbon right across the bottom of the faux ribbon is where I've been putting it. And then it hangs over a little bit on the flap, as you can see here, just a little bit. Now I have a terrible time with my Fabri-Tac, so I'm going to do this offline because it takes forever. This bottle is horrible. So when I come back, you'll see that this is glued on. Okay, so there we are with both of our pockets done. We can decorate this more later. We can even add some decorative paper in between the 2 pockets and at the top and the bottom. But right now, that's all I'm going to do. I really just want to be able to show you how I constructed the pages. Okay, now we're going to move on to the guest tab. We're working on the back side. And for this, we're going to create a side pocket. And it will be a bit dimensional as well. So I'm going to give you the measurements for everything that you're going to need to create it. I'm using a decorative piece that is 6.5 by 11 3/4. It's going to go the full width of our divider page. You're going to need a back mat for the pocket, and this measures 3 1/4 by 11 1/2. It's going to go kind of like on the inside of the pocket, even a little border around it. Now I wanted to kind of make this side pop up a little bit, so I'm pulling out the green and I'm using the Artisan cardstock green from Country Craft Creation. Really great cardstock, by the way. And this measures 7/8 by 11 3/4, and I'm just going to add this little strip right here to the back side of my decorative paper, just to give it a little pop. But to make this dimensional, what we need are 2 strips that measure 1 inch by 6. And we're going to take and score those down the center. What we're doing is creating hinges, so we're just going to score it 1/2 inch on the short end on both pieces. Okay, let's fold on those and burnish. Now I could have used the decorative paper, but I decided that I would rather have the pop of green rather than repeating this pattern. So let's turn this over, and now we're going to adhere our little strips to the sides. And you know what? We also need to score this. So let's bring back out our scoreboard, and we're going to score at 1/2 inch on the 6.5 inch side. Okay, so let's fold this over and burnish. And now we can adhere these two, and then we'll do any hinge cutting, trimming. So that's what we have right now, and then I'm going to take my strip and I'm going to add that to the back of the page as well. Now the best way is probably to add adhesive to the strip first. Okay, now we're going to add adhesive to our tab on the back of the decorative page, and we're going to add that right onto our divider. Just line up the sides. Now we should add the liner piece for the pocket. Check it before you burnish it down, and then go ahead and do that. Okay, then add your adhesive to both sides, and then we can flip this up, fold in your tabs, and make sure you go from the center out to make sure it's flat. And then burnish. And there is our guest pocket. Nice dimensional pocket there. So my thinking is in the guest section you would have invitations, RSVPs, the guest list of who's coming, who's not coming, and maybe transportation that's needed or travel accommodations, things like that. And as I thought about that, I was thinking that the bride-to-be may want to keep a copy of the wedding invitation, the RSVP, and there's a detailed card now that sometimes accompanies the invitations. So what I've done is created some templates, if you will, of what a standard size is. So for an invitation, mainly the standard size is a 5x7. So that's what this is. The details card is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I made a little mock-up of that. And then the reply card, which can be, and any of these can be in either orientation. This measures 3 by 5. So I thought it would be good to create another half page that would be able to hold these really important documents for this event. So what we're going to need for our page is a piece that measures 6 1/4 by 11 3/4 inches. You're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 6 by 11 1/2, and these will go on top of the cardstock. So one on the front and one on the back. So when I was thinking about laying these out, I had an idea that we would put the invitation on the front, and I wanted to kind of dress it up a little bit. And as you can see, I selected a decorative paper that was very neutral so that no matter what kind of invitation you had, it shouldn't clash with this paper. So think about that when you're selecting, or maybe you already know what your invitation is going to look like, and then you can pick something that's matching. But there's that. So then I thought about zhuzhing it up, if you will, and I decided to use this Die-Zyre metal die called Sophia. I rarely use this, if ever. And so I went ahead and cut this out. And when you cut it out, it really doesn't cut it out of the paper. It just cuts one side fully, and then the other side is still attached to your paper. So I thought, oh, how perfect is that? I can use this to create a little pocket, and then that way, this could just be a placeholder, and then the real invitation could be tucked in there later on. So that's how I'm going to do that side. Now on the back, what I did was I took the die. If this is my paper, I ran it through once, and then I took the die, I flipped it over to the other side of the paper and ran it through again. So what ended up happening is this. And I am absolutely loving this. Oh my gosh, need to do this more often. I used a 6-inch long piece of cardstock. This has a shimmer in it. It's really pretty, nice and neutral as well. Goes great with this background paper. And I don't remember how wide it was. Maybe 6 by 5, probably, because if you look at this, and this is 5. What is this? So this is 4 1/4. So maybe 4 1/2, just so it has enough to cut out the actual image, by 6. If you have this die or something like it, that's how I did it. So this is going to go on the page, and what I'm going to do is put the detail card at the top, and I'm going to put it in a location where it's upright. But if you have your details that are going landscape, it can still fit into the pocket. And then I'll take the reply card, which is typically landscape, and that will tuck up underneath the bottom there. So that's how that one's going to look. I think this turned out really neat, and I would love to see this in action, but whatever. So what I'm going to do now is really just glue everything off camera. Since I already showed you how I'm doing everything, I'm just going to add glue down the center here and just glue the center, maybe a little bit on the side, so that when you tuck your piece in there, that it will actually stay in there. So if you don't have a border die, you could just do a strip of decorative paper and make little tuck spots for that piece. You could use other border dies, whatever you have in your stash. So here is my final page. I just wanted to come back on and show you. I have actually created some inserts for you. There'll be a PDF file. And I have the 5 by 7 size, and I've added place invitation here with a little bit of decoration on the ends, which I think go with the collection. And then on the back side, I've done the same thing as well. So there'll be one in the templates in case you want to use them, which is in the link below. Super cute. I love how this turned out. Now, when I was creating this project, I was actually going to create my own wedding planner printable, and it was really just taking away from me getting this project done. So I did a search for wedding planner printables, and I found that there are several free ones out there, and I have decided to go with russellandhazel.com. I'll have this link down below for you. But they had this really, really fabulous printable. And so I'm going to be using this one throughout the creation of this project. So they had this really nice section for the budget, and these are all the worksheets that you could use. I mean, they have thought of everything. I did print this out double-sided, but you could print this out single-sided. However you want that to be in your planner is purely up to you. And however many copies of things that you want is up to you as well. So behind the budget divider, I'm going to be adding this budget worksheet, again, from russellandhazel.com, and I'm going to put that there. For guest section, they also had a guest list tracker, which I thought was wonderful. It has everything you need all right here. So not only did they have this fabulous guest list tracker, they also had a transportation worksheet, which I thought was wonderful, a great way to keep track of guests as well as people in the wedding party. And then she had a travel and accommodations worksheet. And this is another wonderful item. Now the font on this is super small. I also thought about resizing it, but you know what? I can't do that. I can't do it. It would just take too much time to redo that. So these are still workable for those with young eyes. So I thought that these were 3 great inserts to put in this section. You would definitely want to make sure you print out enough copies that you need for all your guests and have them in this section. You could even possibly add index dividers that are alphabet if you wanted to alphabetize your guest along with their worksheet. What I've decided to do is create some smaller dividers to separate the categories within this section. So what I've done is create a SVG file, and you will be able to cut these out on your cutting machine if you have that capability. Or I'm going to also give you the measurements and you can cut and create these by hand. So the smallest divider measures 9 by 3, and you're going to score down the left side at 1/2 inch. Again, we're going to fold this over and glue that down. So this would be our first divider. And as you can see here, when this all gets put together, these dividers are lower than the main divider because I don't want there to be any interference when you're flipping through the categories. So that way, once you flip the larger divider, then you'll come upon the smaller ones. And these are slightly larger than the 8.5 by 11 so that you don't run into the paper. So here, let me show you the other ones. Here's the next one. And then here is the third one. So these aren't full sheets. I didn't really want that. I just wanted something different. So I made them to be smaller and half-sized, and I only made 3 for this section. So the second divider measures 9 by 6 plus your tab, and I forgot to mention that on this one. When you use the SVG file, these will be different measurements because they already have the tab on them. When you're making them by hand, I'm giving you those measurements, which was 7/8 inches wide by, you would need 1/4 of an inch in height to attach it to the divider if you're making it by hand. And again, we've scored at 1/2 inch on the left side, and we're going to fold over and burnish and then glue that down. And we're doing this to all 3. Our third divider measures 9 by 9 plus your tab. Again, you're going to score down the left-hand side at 1/2 inch. So there we have our 3 dividers, and then we can separate each of these categories. Transportation in the back. I'm putting travel accommodations in the second one and the guest list under the first one. In the cut file, you'll also find 3 little labels to go along with these categories. So I'm going to go ahead and put these on before I lose these little bits. They're so tiny. And I believe I included a blank one as well for those that may want to use these dividers in other sections. And I don't know if I'm going to do that yet because I haven't completed the project yet. So I'm kind of making this along with you just right before you do. It's like we're making it together. Okay, that's cute. Okay, now for the decorating, the problem I'm having is I don't have a lot of the paper left, and I'm trying to be very strategic about how I'm using it. So I cut paper for the first one, but I'll give you the measurements for the second and third tab so that you can go ahead and decorate yours. But I probably won't add pattern paper to these until I get the other sections done, and then I'll come back and see how I want to decorate them, just to make sure I have enough paper. So for this one, you're going to need 2 pieces of pattern paper, and these measure 8 1/4 by 2 3/4. I'm going to glue this first one on with you because I'm going to give you some measurements for another item to go on top of this. But I will add the back pattern piece off camera. So that's how that one will look, okay? Like that. Now, to add a little decoration here, what I've done is created a photo mat, and this base piece is the Artisan's cardstock green. This measures 3 3/4 by 2 1/2. And I'm going to put this down. And then I have another like a satiny cardstock, and this measures 3 1/2 by 2 1/4. And that is the mat for the green cardstock. And then what I thought we would do is just add a little bit of decoration, ephemera or stickers or something around this. Okay, I'm going to put this aside for a moment so I can give you the other measurements for the pattern paper. This is the middle tab. The pattern paper, you're going to need 2 8 1/4 by 5 3/4. One for the front, one for the back. For the larger, you're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock that measure 8 1/4 by 8 3/4. Again, that'll be one for the front and one for the back. And if I do anything extra, like I'm doing with this smaller one, you know, I'll always come back and share that with you. Now I'm going to put these pages and dividers aside because on the inside of the guest divider, I did decide to create a little photo mat tuck spot. So what I'm using is the Artisan cardstock green again. This is 4 by 5. I have the satiny cardstock. I cut this out using my Cricut Design Space and just made a scallop edge around the cardstock. But the final size is 3 1/2 by 4 1/2. So if you don't have the capability to make a decorative edge, just use the 3 1/2 by 4 1/2 straight cut edges. It'll go like that. And then I'm using one of the cut apart cards in the collection. Here Comes the Bride. And this measures 3 by 4. And I'm going to put this on top. I'm going to have this whole thing at an angle so that another photo mat can be tucked in here at the back side of it. So then when you look over to your pages, just to give you kind of a whole idea of how this is going to be laid out, we'll have this down here. And that's why I made a coordinating photo mat here. And we'll add our decorations around it. And it will look really nice to open up to that section. Now to finish this side off, or this little tab, what I've done is taken some of this paper and just cut out some of the flowers. And I'm going to put this on either side of the little photo mat. I'm going to place it behind it. Just a little bit. To give it dimension, as if it's sitting in front of it. Something like that. I think that will be cute, yeah? So let's try to glue these down without moving everything. So I'm just lining it up with the bottom of the back paper. And I'm not even worried if this isn't in the exact center, because we're going to be placing some type of hole on this side. So you have to consider, you know, almost a ½ inch of this is going to be used for other purposes. So I think once we do that, the spacing looks good. And I didn't even plan it. And for the photo mat for over here, I have a 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 piece of cardstock, the Green Artisan, and the shimmer card is 4 by 6. And I'm just going to put those together and tuck that down in there. And there we have it. And you can certainly embellish this more than I have it right now. I may do that later on. But that is this section complete. So that's everything that I have for you today. I am making these nice and short videos so that you don't get overwhelmed, because creating a planner of this magnitude when you're talking about a wedding can get overwhelming when you think of all the details that you want to put into this planner, because there's so many details in a wedding. So I hope that this works out for you. It is working out for me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out.